Hi everyone, my name is Lisi Linhart and I want to talk to you today about headless e-commerce with Next.js. I work as a developer experience engineer at Storyblok, which means that I write a lot of tutorials and build apps to make Storyblok easier to use and learn. Before we start, I want to shortly explain what I mean with headless e-commerce. So to understand that, we have to look at what content management and e-commerce systems there are. So over the years, we got a lot of content management systems, and a lot of the CMS systems offered e-commerce options. So you could sell with WordPress, with Squarespace, with Shopify. And then after 2010, we got more headless systems. So headless systems were a bit different from these previous systems because they focused more on separating the front and the back end. They had an API first approach and they really focused on a global infrastructure. So to offer support for multiple languages, for multiple countries, for different channels like IoT or mobile apps and all these kinds of optimizations. And when we talk about headless e-commerce, we mean to combine an e-commerce system like Shopify with a headless content management system like Storyblok. And that's kind of what this talk is about. So in this talk, we want to build an imaginary store called Unicorn Dash. So for this brand, we want to build a store. And to get this up and running, 4 people meet around a table. We have a developer, a manager, a client, and an editor. And everyone has their own requirements. So the client starts the meeting off with saying, well, I want a fast and good-looking store that works with my logistics. So he chooses BigCommerce because BigCommerce really works well in a global scale and offers a lot of great features for selling products. Then we have the manager. Well, the manager says, I want to create something that we can reuse for other stores to quickly develop new stores. So he wants to take an approach that really focuses on atomic design and building upon components that can be reused. The editor says, well, I want to be able to quickly and easily make changes and be able to discuss those changes. So the editor suggests to use Storyblok because it's really optimized for editors. And finally, we have the developer. And the developer says, well, if you want it to be quick and reusable, I want to use my own tech stack. So I want to go for Next.js with React and TypeScript. So that's kind of our Unicorn Dash tech stack. We have Next.js that's built on the gem stack to build really fast and secure sites. We have Storyblok to handle the content management, especially for the editors who will work with the content. And then finally, we have BigCommerce to handle all the product management to sell those products. So we will start off with the developer and Next.js. Next.js offers a starter kit that's called Next.js Commerce. And that's pretty great because this starter kit has really good performance. It's built on components, which is what we want. We have TypeScript support and it integrates really nicely with Vercel and Vercel deployments. So we get incremental builds, we get analytics and all those kinds of optimizations. So if we want to get started, we can click this deploy button on the Vercel site, or we can also clone the repository, install dependencies, and the first step we need to do is to add some environment variables. So since the starter only works if it's connected to a BigCommerce store, we need all those BigCommerce API URLs and tokens in order to access our products, to display them. And then we will also need a Storyblok token to access our Storyblok store. So that's our really first step, get all the environment variables needed. And once we have all those environment variables, we can already start our development server and we will see some basic components set up and displayed. So the next step is to set up Storyblok. To have this storefront connected to Storyblok is great because we get this real-time visual editor. We can easily rearrange different components. We can create new pages that look a bit different. We can select different products from BigCommerce, so we can really select what we want to display where. And we have a lot of editor features like translations, like reviewing, and all those kinds of features. You can find the code examples for this on GitHub. So there's a starter that shows how to connect this Vercel starter with Storyblok. And there's also a detailed tutorial explaining all the different steps. So in there you will find this Use Template button. And with this Use Template button, you can duplicate a space we already set up. And this setup space will already have a few components set up, like a hero component, a featured component, and it will also show the Storyblok token we will need in our environment variables. And if we go into a specific component, we can also see the eCommerce integrations set up. So these eCommerce integrations are necessary to connect Storyblok to BigCommerce to select which products you really want to display where. Finally, we will need our BigCommerce store. So BigCommerce is an e-commerce provider that has really good APIs. So they have a nice storefront and management API. They offer different shipping providers and stock management, and that's pretty easy to work with together with these starter templates. And that's what BigCommerce looks like. So you have different products, you can add products, you can import products from a different tool, and you can set up different categories and sales channels for handling your products. So after our client added all the products, we will need to connect Storyblok to Next.js. So connect the content management system with the e-commerce starter. To do that, we need to install the Storyblok package. You can also follow the tutorial on the left, so add a Headless CMS to Next.js in 5 minutes, which basically goes through these different steps. After we install the packages, we need to create a client. So in JavaScript, we need to add our access token that we got from our Storyblok space. After we added this client, we then need to create some React hooks to activate the visual editor. So we have input events or save events, and we want to initialize those on all the pages where we want to use Storyblok whenever we are inside of Storyblok. So that's the last step, to initialize this hook and bridge. Once we created a client and initialize the hook, we can get some data. In Next.js, we would get this data in the getStaticProps function, which lets us build static sites. So this is on the server to kind of optimize and make the page faster. And then we have the hook in our render function to initialize the different window events we have, like clicking, typing, or any input event that would need to change the visible content. Then the next step finally is to connect those components we have in the duplicated space. So inside of Storyblok, we will have a hero component, a featured products component, a slider, and a grid. And these components that we have in Storyblok, we want to connect to the components that are inside the Next.js commerce starter. So we need to write a component that can handle this kind of matching of components. So we create a file that's called dynamic component. It will resolve the name that we have inside of Storyblok. So every component in Storyblok has kind of a technical name, and it will resolve that name to a specific component in Next.js, which you can see in the top. And if it found a component, so if in Storyblok we have a component and it finds a Next.js component that fits it, we will wrap that in a SB editable component, which is in the Storyblok React package. And what this does is that it makes a component clickable. So you can click on it and live edit it, and this matches kind of the events inside the visual editor. And if it can find a component, it will just return a text saying, well, we couldn't find this component in Next.js. If you're not sure where to find those technical names, you can always in any story look inside the draft JSON. And inside the draft JSON, you will see the whole JSON that is returned from Storyblok. And there inside the story content body, you will find the different components, and the component name inside any component will show what its technical name is. All right, so now we set up our dynamic components. It will resolve the Storyblok content to a specific component in Next.js. And then we don't need that much HTML markup. So we can just iterate over all the components we have in Storyblok. And then this dynamic component will resolve the right component and return it. And then the content will automatically be loaded in the right order. And the last step that we need for our dynamic components is, of course, to add the Storyblok content to the component itself. So to every component that we want to be dynamic, we need to add this Storyblok block property and pass that to the component, and then we can read it inside of the component. And we can also match that with like static content. So we could either show the Storyblok content or some other content, for example, what you got from your e-commerce provider. All right. And the last step, of course, is to add some products in Storyblok. So for this use case, we created e-commerce integrations that can be connected to different e-commerce systems. And we have some detailed guides on how to set this up. So you will need an endpoint and a token to load the products from your e-commerce system. And these e-commerce integrations were built for Shopify, BigCommerce, Shopware, and Commerce Tools. And they essentially let you select some products or some categories from your e-commerce provider to then be able to resolve those to some components. All right, and then the last step is to try that all out. So now we added Storyblok to Next.js. We created some dynamic components to load components based on what content we have in Storyblok. We will need to add some products in Storyblok, and finally we can live edit everything in Storyblok, and that's what we will see now. So let's take a look at the demo. 1 second. So here we are in Storyblok. We have some home story, which is basically our start page, and this loads the example we have before. Now we can click on our first component and add some unicorn dash heading and some other text we want to change. And then we can also adapt any component. So in this example, I adapted the component to also be able to change a color. Then the next component has some different products. So here we can change the layout, and then we can select some unicorn-based products that we want to have in here. So we select the products, and then since these need to be reloaded from BigCommerce, we need to click Save Once, and then it will reload those products. That looks already a lot better. We can rearrange them like I already said. And here we will have some new products. And then the next step is to replace all the products where we want to have unicorn products. So we don't want these anymore, and we will select the other products we want to have in this slider. Click Save again. It will reload it from BigCommerce. And finally, we can also select some categories from BigCommerce and delete the products we don't want. Select some new products. And click Save. And now we already have a start page that fits our unicorn dash brand. We will change the color here on the top because that's really black and we want it more to have a unicorn kind of color. All right, so that's the start page. And that was pretty quick to change since everything is like clickable and you can resort it in Storyblok. We can adapt pages pretty quickly and they're really customizable. We can delete the components we don't want. We can add new components that were previously not there and really adapt it to the current sale week, for example. The Next.js starter also has kind of a blog page. This is more static. We can also make whole pages editable and adapt them. We will add some different images. And here the page is really just another component that is changeable and editable through Storyblok. So this page also looks more unicorn-like. And finally, another good use case would be that you want to review some changes. So here you have some text you changed, and before you really want to publish it, you want to check that with someone else. So you will use the workflow assignments to notify someone else to check this specific page, and then publish it once it's checked. Finally, some products might be like featured really big because you want to sell them, and on some of them you might want to have some different content. So in Storyblok you could create a new story for this product, and all you need to take care of is that the slug matches. So the slug needs to be products in the products folder and then unicorn popsicles. And once the slug matches, it will load this page from BigCommerce, but then you can replace the BigCommerce content with some other content and kind of override this custom product page with, for example, more components or different content that you need for this specific product because you have some kind of sale week. All right, and with this we already got a really nice setup for Unicorn Dash, and we set that up pretty quickly, and it can also be adapted pretty quickly because you have these click events, you have these components, and it's a very flexible setup that can be adapted to many use cases. Also, we have the review features, and we also have a lot of other editing features, like different pipelines. You can have a draft version of something and then a published version. You can translate to any language, and you can easily work together with different people in this editing experience. All right, so our store is ready. At the end of the day, all the people sit back together and talk about what they achieved in this project. The developer talks about her experience with Next.js. She says, well, it's great the components are already set up in the starter and I can easily adapt them in Storyblok and add my own logic. The manager says, we have another client that needs a similar setup. We will reuse the same components, and we can reuse the components in the Next.js starter as well as the components in Storyblok for a different client because we can just duplicate this space. The editor says, well, that's really cool because I can easily prepare and discuss the campaign for the next big launch. So they have a way to work with the content without needing too much technical knowledge. And the client says, well, this meets our requirements. We will sell globally in no time. Because it's a headless CMS, it can really be optimized to a global first infrastructure, to multiple languages, to build on the Jamstack, to have really fast storefronts, and all these kinds of optimizations. So in the end, a headless e-commerce system might be the right choice for you if you want to manage your storefront on multiple channels. So maybe you not only want to serve a website, but you also have a mobile app, you have some email marketing, you have IoT things that need to consume this content. Then this API first approach really could be the right choice. What's also really cool is that you can use the technology you feel comfortable with. So you can use Next.js, you could use Next.js, you could use Gatsby, you could use any framework that you like, because we don't make the technical choice for you, we just give you the content. All these sites that are built on the gem stack increase the performance and the security of sites. It's really hard to attack a site that's statically built, so that's also a big advantage. And with Storyblok, you get a really nice user interface and this live visual editor that makes it really easy to edit and set up new pages pretty quickly. Since we are really focused on building solutions on a component-based approach, these applications become really flexible and easy to customize. And with the visual editor, you can really focus on the solution your customer sees you. So you don't have to edit content in the backend without seeing what a field might be changing. If you don't build solutions with Next.js, I can also recommend the talk of my colleague, a sneak peek into the future of headless e-commerce. So he really focuses on Vue and Next.js, and he will tell you about how to connect Shopify with Next.js and Vue storefront to create all this architecture in Vue. Finally, we have a detailed tutorial on how to connect Next.js and BigCommerce and Storyblok that you can follow step by step. So it's kind of what I talked to you about now in this talk. And we also have a really big developer community. So you can check out our Discord to talk to different developers that create really flexible solutions and different apps with Storyblok. And we also have ambassadors that are really, really active with Storyblok and give a lot of great advice on the Discord channel. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.